Okay. We are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to ISAC's Going to College Summer Series.
Today, we're going to be talking about commuting and its perks and challenges.
So, I'm Viviana. I work in the Moraine Valley Community College District. And in college, I commuted from the south side of Chicago as well as the south suburbs to the city of Chicago.
And my name is Yailin Salinas. For undergrad, I went to Loyola and I was commuting from the southwest side of Chicago to the north side of Chicago where Loyola is located.
All right. So, our first topic that we're going to go into is the costs of commuting. Most commuters probably have a little bit more limited costs, or maybe that was a reason why you chose to commute, just to save on some of those college costs. So a main thing is going to be car maintenance and gas. If you choose to drive to school, that's something to think about, whether you're going to have your car already, if you need to purchase a car, gas prices, make sure that your car is up and running, tires, everything that has to do with it is a cost to consider.
If you are driving to school, I would say be considerate of traffic. I know for me, downtown Chicago was very hard to drive through at times. So just be considerate when you're driving and have extra time in the morning or whenever you plan on leaving for school, just to have that extra space just in case.
Along with driving is going to be parking and school passes. So if anyone has driven in the city, you know that parking can be a little bit of a hassle. So it's very important to know what kind of parking options you have on campus. So a lot of campuses do have their own parking lots reserved for their students. Sometimes they are an hourly rate, and sometimes you have to buy a parking pass, which can be a pretty hefty price. So definitely get knowledgeable with that, as well as public parking. Again, City of Chicago, sometimes you can find free parking, sometimes you can't. But that's just a very key point if you're going to be driving, is just know where you can park.
Yeah, how is it for you? I know for me, my school did a semester pass. It was kind of expensive, like a couple $100 per semester. So at times, the best option was just like finding street parking and doing it that way.
Yes. Yeah. For us at UIC, I went to UIC. We also had semester passes, which were around, a couple $100.
Yeah.
We also had a parking lot that was an hourly rate. So that was kind of nice.
Yeah.
So maybe if you're driving only one day, you don't want to spend the full, however much it was for the parking pass, you can just pay hourly in that one parking
I wish we
lot.
had that.
Yeah. That's a good option. Those are things to look into when you're considering commuting to your school.
Yeah. And then I guess we could also talk about other forms of transportation, like taking the train or taking the bus. I know with like schools that are located within cities, sometimes they offer like a pass. Chicago, I know they offer the U Pass, which is like unlimited rides.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, UIC, that's something that I utilized, was the U Pass. So we were able to, like you said, have unlimited rides, CTA buses and trains.
Yeah.
So that was really nice. It was included in our tuition. So it wasn't like you were necessarily paying extra for it, but they did have the option to opt out of it if you didn't want to utilize it.
Yeah,
so
same here.
some people that were strictly driving to school, they could opt out of that and they didn't have to pay that extra cost in tuition.
That's so nice. Yeah, that was the same way over here. And then with like taking the train too, sometimes you become familiar with the people that are taking the same route as you, and that's something that I would recommend doing before you start classes. For your first time.
Yeah, get to know
your
who's on
route.
the same route as you, different options of routes that you can be taking.
Yeah.
I don't know about your experience, but I definitely had those times where the train was running late,
Oh yeah, for
or
sure.
a bus broke down, and you kind of and you have to you have to know what are the other options that you can take, so you're not just stranded there. So that was definitely something to look into. I would say, to help with that, I'm not sure if you use this as well, Google Maps is great for finding the next time that a bus or train is coming. I know CTA also has the separate apps that students can use that will also tell you different bus routes that you can take, train routes, when they're arriving, when they're departing, and things of that nature. So those apps, definitely look into
find
those.
your local apps for all of the transportation in your area, because that's going to help a lot. That's a good point.
Yeah. What else in public transportation? So we did mention that some schools will offer you free passes. I also commuted from the south suburbs of Chicago, so that process looked a little bit different as far as public transportation. So I actually used the South Shore Line. They do have stations in the south and southwest suburbs, but they have separate passes. So you couldn't use a U pass, a CTA pass, for the South Shore line.
Is that
so,
like you have to buy like tickets or something?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
wow.
So
Okay.
yeah, so there are tickets, but they also have passes, which is nice for students or those that are regularly commuting. But that's just another thing to consider is
Yeah.
that separate cost. Especially if you don't have city transportation like the CTA, what are those costs going to be? Do they have student discounts? Can you buy little passes here and there, like it was in my case for the South Shore line? Just another thing to consider when commuting.
That's so smart. Yeah. Do you want to talk about our experience of being involved on campus? I know for me, when I was a commuter student, especially as a freshman, it was really hard for me to make friends because, it's just like you go to class and then you can't really talk to other people because you're trying to learn. And then you just like leave right after class. So something that I did was I would try to go to like the fair, like the organizational fairs where all the clubs and all the orgs on campus come out with the table and present themselves. So that's how I found out about like a bike club, or like you could find about fraternities and sororities there. And
Greek
that's
life.
like, Greek life, if you're interested in that. That's how I got involved. Do you want to talk about your experience?
Yeah, so UIC is a huge commuter school. So like you're saying, a lot of the students go to class and go straight home. So it was very hard to connect with other students. In my experience, I wasn't involved too heavily with certain organizations, but it was just a matter of putting myself out there during class and making connections that way. So one of my best friends that is still one of my friends to this day, we actually met just because we were chatting in class.
Yeah.
But it is very difficult. You don't have that set roommate. You don't have, people on the same floor as you that you might be seeing all the time. So it really is reliant on who's in your classes, as well as maybe people that are on the same train or bus routes as you. So that's, just finding ways to connect and stay involved in campus, which is a huge part of going to college, being involved, making those connections with other students, and really living the full college experience without dorming. Just because you're not dorming doesn't mean that you can't still enjoy all of those extra benefits.
That is so true. It might be harder because like some clubs or some events are later on in the day, but sometimes making that time to stay for those events that are later in the day, or finding clubs or orgs that hang out at like 3 p.m. versus like 7 or 6 p.m. might be like better.
Yes. And along with that is being organized and planning ahead. So when you don't have a home or a room really close by when you're at school, it is very, very important to be planning ahead, making sure you're prepared, planning that schedule. Like if there's a club, for example, or a meeting that you want to attend later on in the evening, there's a lot of things to consider. Like, what are you going to have for dinner? Do you have everything you need? How's the weather going to be at that time? Because you don't have that room or that home,
you can go run and grab something.
Exactly. So being organized, being prepared, and planning ahead with traffic and, all of that is very important as a commuter.
Yeah, and you kind of like, you're talking about how like sometimes you don't always have that space. Did your school have like a space for commuter students? I know that mine did.
So I can start with that. So at UIC, we did have a commuter center, which was basically a big room filled with couches, chairs. There was computers for students to use. There was microwaves, and there was also lockers. So again, you don't have that room close by, but you could use a locker to keep, say, your gym bag or your backpack or whatever else, your snow boots if it's winter, things like that. So a lot of students would go there just to hang out between large breaks during classes. It was a really safe space. There were students that would take naps in their breaks. So I think that's very beneficial if your school does offer something like that, and just knowing where to go in those situations. What about you?
My school has the same thing, just a room where these commuter students can come together. And it does, once you start going often, it becomes like a community. And that's their intentions, because they know that they have commuter students, and this is a great way for them to build connections. And I know at Loyola what they had was like every month they had like a commuter day or something, so they would have like snacks and stickers and lanyards and things like that just
pizza nights, things like that. It's really important to just try and get involved as much as you can, and also take advantage of those resources. Like you're saying, if they're offering things to commuters, those are there for you guys. They are supporting you guys, offering you whatever you might need. So definitely be checking in on little things like that. I think that's very helpful. Along with other spaces on campus, like I don't know about your experience, but I did have large breaks in between my classes, where you don't always have, again, that room or that dorm to go back to. So for me, it was just finding what buildings have a microwave for
Oh,
my
yeah.
for the lunch that I packed, or what buildings have a nice couch where I can just sit. What buildings have seating near plugs so I can charge my laptop and do my homework. So it did take me a while. I don't know about you to
No,
like
yeah.
find those places, and it's kind of like a trial and error type of situation. Just seeing where you feel comfortable, what areas get busy, because I know as a commuter, finding like that good, quiet, comfortable, safe space is vital, especially when you're doing homework and studying and
No,
things
yeah,
like that.
same here. Like in some of our buildings, not necessarily even just like the main building on our campus, in some like the buildings that are known for lecture, if you go like
Right.
to the top floor, there's
Right.
microwaves,
Mhm.
there's places for students to hang out and
Mhm.
chill. So just finding those spaces. And I was also going to mention like finding coffee shops or cafes nearby and just hanging out there. Like they know that there's going to be college students there hanging out. So
Yeah.
it's really nice to find what's around you. So yeah.
Yeah, I would say that's a really good point. So as a commuter, you don't have your regular dorm. I know I
Yeah.
keep repeating this, but that's a great point. Going to local coffee shops and trying out new places. I know my friends and I would do like a weekly or monthly night where we would try a new restaurant, and that was our way of bonding after hours, and then we could kind of arrange it in our own schedule and then still make connections, still make friends. We would invite other people and also get involved and just get to know your community and the campus area better.
That's so nice.
Especially in the city, there's a lot of fun
There's a lot of
things.
stuff to do.
Yeah, and as a commuter, it is kind of tough because a lot of the time you want to go to class and then go home because of traffic or whatnot. But it is really important to find that time and find those spaces where you can connect and build relationships.
I think so too. Do you just want to give some tips?
Yes. So we do have quite a few tips just from being commuters in our own college experiences. So I think a big tip for me that I used, or a little trick, was to keep a little bag of some sort, of like an emergency kit, basically. So I kept Band-Aids, hand sanitizer, disinfectant wipes, hair ties, things of that sort, because you never know when you're going to need them, and you're far away from home. So you could keep it in your car, in your backpack. I would keep an extra set of like fork and knife and spoon, because you don't, you don't know what the situation is going to be like. And you don't have that quick access to your own personal things. So I had like a whole separate little section or in my backpack or in your car even. It's good to have an emergency kit for your car too, just to make sure that you're always prepared. It's a big thing being prepared as a commuter.
Going off of that, dressing appropriately, I know appropriately for the weather, I know when I was taking the train, it was much harder when I was driving to school, especially in Illinois with
in
like
winter,
the snow. It's so hard. So like having to wear some boots or some thick pants, a jacket sometimes, or even carrying it in your backpack. It might be heavy, but sometimes it's needed.
Definitely.
You have to prepare for the unexpected sometimes.
Yes, that's a good tip. Along with that, carrying snacks in a water bottle, a refillable water bottle, is great. It can get a little bit pricey just because you don't have your set fridge or something along those lines. So making sure that that's included in your budget and finding ways where you can affordably be eating. It sounds silly, but I think that's super important. You never know when you're gonna get hungry, or if one of your friends is feeling hungry. I know I always had snacks on me. I would be snacking on the train while I was reading, my homework assignments and things like that.
Going off of that, maybe even carrying like a couple dollars or something on you, just in case you
vending machines.
In case you do forget your snacks one day or your drink, you're like, oh, I have a couple of dollars. Let me go run to the vending machine.
That's another good thing to bring up is vending machines on campus. So I was definitely familiar with where they were located. Just in case, because again, as a commuter, you can be running late sometimes, or traffic hits you and you don't have time to stop for lunch
or something.
Quick breakfast. It's super important to know where you can find food on campus as well.
And then I guess just overall, maybe just being cautious and being safe.
Of course.
Because you're taking
public transportation sometimes. If you're parking far, you might be walking a distance, it might be late at night, and that's just with anything. But again, as a commuter, you might be alone sometimes. It's always important to just stay vigilant, be cautious, and just
Yeah, just be aware
of your
of your
surroundings.
surroundings, and also having I know some schools have like what's it called, like the security number that you can have on your phone at all
Yes, for
times.
sure. I think
Yeah.
that's important to know, especially if you're going to be walking or
A lot,
traveling
yeah.
a lot on your own. That's very important.
Any other thoughts or anything we've forgotten?
I personally enjoyed my experience as a commuter. It can get a little bit stressful, but just know it's definitely doable. Just because you aren't dorming on campus doesn't mean that you're not a real college student.
Yeah.
Commuting is very common, and it's not something that should deter you from going to school if you do have to commute.
Yeah. Same here. I feel like that kind of made my college experience unique from all of
Yes.
my peers at school, just because a lot of them did dorm, and I guess I had my own stories, and I was
Yeah.
like, well, this happened on the train today or whatever.
Yeah.
So you
You
like
learn, you learn, and
yeah.
it helped me just become more independent. I feel like because you're
For
traveling on your
sure.
own.
I remember feeling like that at first. I was like, I can't make friends, or how do I do this? But over time, it does get better.
It
and
does.
Yeah.
It's definitely doable. All right. I think that's all we have for you all today. So thank you so much for tuning in. Again, I'm Viviana.
And I'm Yaelin.
And this was our ISEX Going to College Summer Series session.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.